In the quiet hush of the shelter, where broken meows and tired sighs blended with the hum of fluorescent lights, there lived a cat whose grief could silence even the most hardened soul. His name was Max, though the sound of it seemed to pierce his own heart with longing. He was not just another shelter story, not just another pet waiting for adoption. No, Max was a song of sorrow, a melody of loss that kept the night heavy with cries. His family, bound by tragedy, had left him here, believing it was for the best. Yet in the hollow corners of his cage, Max wept not just for their absence, but for something deeper, something only his fragile heart carried. His cries at night were not ordinary. They were like psalms echoing in a cathedral, reaching out for the one voice he knew and loved. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And in Max's crushed spirit, all of humanity could see its own reflection. This was not merely an animal rescue. It was a living parable of grief, a viral YouTube story waiting to shatter hearts across the world. A touching animal story where survival meant holding on to memory when the world had already moved on. The shelter workers whispered about him, calling his cries the most heart-wrenching sound they had ever heard. And so, the curtain lifted on a drama where animal and humanity would meet in one of the most emotional true stories ever told. One morning, the fluorescent dawn broke over the shelter, but its pale light couldn't dim the heaviness of Max's spirit. Dr. Ryan Johnson, a man whose heart was stitched with compassion for every lost soul that crossed his path, approached Max's cage with the care of someone stepping into sacred ground. He noticed something unusual, something others had overlooked. Max's collar, worn and faded, clinging to the cat's neck as though it held the last breath of someone long gone. Ryan leaned closer, his breath catching when his eyes fell on the scratched, almost ghostly letters etched into the metal tag. His pulse raced. "This can't be right," he whispered, his voice trembling with awe and confusion. Sarah, his loyal assistant, hurried over, sensing urgency. "What's wrong, doctor?" she asked, but even as her question lingered, Max pressed himself against the cold wall of his cage, hiding his face like a child too broken to be seen. Ryan's mind spun. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. What secret did this collar hold? Why did its truth feel like it would break open more than just Max's story? This wasn't just a dramatic wildlife rescue moment. This was a puzzle of love and loss, where human and animal connection blurred into mystery. The air around Ryan thickened, heavy with the weight of destiny, as though the shelter itself knew that this discovery would shake its walls forever. And Max, poor, trembling Max, seemed to hold the key, protecting it with claws of grief. Days passed, but Ryan's heart refused rest. Every visit to Max's cage became a battle not of force but of trust. The cat, once gentle, now lashed out if anyone dared touch his collar. His hiss was like thunder, his swipes a storm, but beneath that rage was pure, raw fear. Ryan realized this wasn't just about grief. No, Max was guarding something, a secret written in metal, a story carved in silence. He brought treats, his hands trembling, his voice cracking as he whispered, "Please, Max, let me help you." Hunger softened the walls of grief for a moment, and as Max devoured the food with desperate gulps, Ryan leaned closer, his eyes catching the faint inscription. And there it was, not Wilson, not the name Helen had spoken. No, this name belonged to another, someone hidden, erased, yet still alive through this fragile animal's memory. His heart thundered as though heaven itself had shouted. "Oh my goodness," Ryan breathed, tears pressing at the edges of his eyes. Sarah rushed to his side. He pointed at the tag, his hand shaking like a prophet holding a revelation. What they saw didn't just question Helen's story, it threatened to rewrite Max's entire life. The truth shall set you free, but for Max, freedom came at the price of memory, and memory was agony. The shelter walls became a cathedral of mystery, each cry from Max echoing with the power of survival, a viral miracle, of a heartwarming animal video that was no longer about adoption, but about uncovering a past buried under loss. This was no ordinary animal rescue, this was the beginning of a legend. Ryan's search for answers took him beyond the shelter's gates. He tore through Max's medical files, each page a testament to a history that didn't quite add up. 6 years of records. Impossible, Max's eyes told a story older, deeper, filled with lifetimes of love. Someone had loved this cat before, someone who had left behind whispers in the scratches of that collar. And so, with the determination of a pilgrim chasing light, Ryan drove toward the Wilson home, his car carrying not just his body, but the prayers of every shelter animal who had ever longed to be understood. The road blurred, but his heart was sharp, imagining what he might uncover. A woman answered the door, not Helen, but her daughter, Susan. Ryan hesitated, but then spoke. "I'm here about Max. Please, may I see your old family photo albums?" It was an unusual request, but grief recognizes grief, and Susan saw the desperation in his eyes. She stepped aside. Inside, the house felt like a museum of echoes, each framed picture a ghost of love past. Ryan's hands shook as he turned the pages, searching for Max in faces, in arms, in the background of joy and sorrow. And there, in one faded photograph, was Max, younger, brighter, sitting proudly beside a man whose eyes held stories untold. Not Robert, someone else, a name not Wilson. And in that instant, Ryan understood. Max's collar wasn't a mistake. It was a map back to a love that had been silenced. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow a nest for herself where she may lay her young. At your altars, O Lord of hosts, in Max's grief, humanity was reminded. No love once given is ever truly lost. And in that revelation, tears came not of sorrow, but of hope. The conclusion of Max's journey was not tragedy, but miracle. Ryan and Susan worked together to piece back the fragments of Max's past, tracing him back to his first family, the one whose name was still etched into that collar. Letters, photographs, and memories began to flow like rivers, connecting Max's cries to the truth he had carried all along. The Wilsons had not been liars, they had been caretakers of a love too heavy for one life to bear. Helen had taken Max in after his true owner, a man named Daniel, had passed away. The collar had never been removed because Max refused to let go of the memory of Daniel. And so when Robert died, Max's cries were not just for Robert, but for every soul he had lost. Grief piled upon grief until the little cat's heart could no longer carry it. But now, with truth unearthed and love remembered, Max found peace. The collar, once a shackle of sorrow, became a badge of survival, of resilience, of a miracle. Susan decided to adopt Max, and in her embrace, his cries softened. No longer was he the heartbroken cat in the corner of a shelter. Now, he was a living testimony of how deep the bond between animal and humanity can run. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds, and so Max's story ended not in grief, but in redemption. His tears had written a viral YouTube story. His sorrow had birthed a heartwarming animal video that touched millions, but more importantly, his survival had taught humanity that love never dies, it simply waits to be remembered. Max was no longer just a crying shelter cat. He became a miracle of memory, a legend of love, a parable of grief transformed into hope. His collar, his cries, his courage, all of it whispered one eternal truth. Animals remember, humans must honor, and love once given is forever. Inside the mansion's grand entrance, Ryan felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The vast hall echoed with whispers of the past, its walls adorned with golden-framed portraits that seemed to carry secrets only the dead could tell. His eyes locked on one in particular, Robert Wilson. The painted eyes followed him with an almost accusing silence, as if to say, "Why are you here? What truth do you dare to uncover?" Ryan's chest tightened. He turned, and there it was, a photograph on a polished mahogany table, Helen and Robert smiling, their arms entwined, and between them sat Max. The same collar gleaming faintly in the faded photo light. Ryan's pulse thundered. He leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass, and studied the tag on Max's neck. His heart skipped. The name was wrong, completely wrong. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That collar carried a light of truth, one that refused to be buried in shadows. Who had Max truly belonged to before? Before Robert, before Helen, before this house became his prison of grief. The silence of the mansion roared in Ryan's ears until the sound of footsteps on the stairs broke it. Susan appeared, her hand clutching a photo album as if it held her entire heart. Her eyes glistened with curiosity and quiet excitement. "Why are you so interested in that particular picture?" she asked softly. Ryan hesitated. He could lie, he could bury the truth to protect the fragile balance, but honesty pulled at his soul like a tide. "I'm fascinated by Max's story," he admitted, "especially after Robert died." Susan's face softened, her features folding into sadness. She sat down beside him, brushing her hand across the album's cover. "My father rescued Max from a car accident," she whispered, voice trembling under the weight of memory. "He was broken, terrified of V.